Hey guys, we are back. We are on module 3.A. So the topic is how buildings stand. We learned a little bit about this last videos, but I just want to go a little more into detail about it. So the hook. Every floor you've ever stood on is transferring weight through a chain of invisible decisions made before the building was even built. Here's how loads actually move through a structure. So point one, it starts at the top and then it works its way down every time. So load hits the roof deck, transfers to the joist. The joist hands it off to the beams. Beams push it down to the columns, and the columns drive it into the footing. That's called the load path. So if you miss one connection in that chain, then the whole thing finds a new path, and that's when things go really wrong. Point two. Loads aren't just gravity. Now here is what most people get wrong. Loads aren't just gravity when it hits the side of a building and it creates movement, and a movement is just a force multiplied by distance. Think of a seesaw, the ones you play when you were a kid. The further from the pivot, the less force you need to flip it. That's why a tall building in wind is basically a giant lever fighting its own footing. And lateral loads, they're rack an entire frame sideways if you don't have a shear wall or a cross bracing to fight back. Point three, excuse me. The difference between a building that moves and one that doesn't comes down to one word: rigidity. A pin joint lets things rotate. It's flexible, but no movement resistance. A ridge joint locks angle. So we have two here. We have the pin joint and we have the rigid joint. So the one can rotate, one is locked in angle, but what does that mean? So for the pin joint, it's a joint that can rotate at connections, it's flexible, it's movable, new movement is transferred between members, will rack sideways under lateral loads without adding bracing. And the other one, it's a beam and a column act as one monolithic piece. Angle is maintained under load, movement is transferred, structure deflects like a spring and distributes stress efficiently. And then we have my closing notes. So your building is basically a really expensive physics problem solved in advance, but what I'm trying to say is dead loads, live loads, or load pass movement, your building is just sitting there. It's having a constant conversation with gravity.